Welcome to this tutorial showing you how to create a piece of artwork in response to the artist Vincent van Gogh. And you'll see in Photopea I have already opened up a photograph of myself, and the first thing I'm going to do is go to Image and Image Size, and I'm going to change the size because it's actually quite big at the moment and I want it to be smaller so the effect that I put on shows better. So I'm going to turn it down to 50% of its original size. Click OK. And you can see it's gone smaller than it was. So I'm just going to zoom in using Control and 0. And now I want to start adding some filters. So I'm going to go Filter and Filter Gallery. And I'm going to go down to the bottom here to Glass. Click on Glass. And then in the parameters, I want the distortion to be 10. And the smoothness to be 15. And I want to choose Canvas on the drop-down menu, and I want the scale to stay at 100%. Click OK. And it doesn't look like much has happened, but what it's done is just apply a gentle ripple across everything on the image, okay, which is going to help when I go Filter, Stylize, and go to Oil Paint. And I'm going to set the parameters as such. So I'm going to go to Radius and I'm going to choose 10 and I'm going to choose 5 under Cleanliness, and then under Scale I'm choosing 6, and then on the Bristle Detail I want that to be 10, and I want to make sure that the lighting checkbox is ticked, and then I want to choose a shine of 1.5, and then I want the angle to be minus 60 degrees. Okay, and then I'm going to click OK, and you can see that it's added a whole load of kind of brushstroke like detail to my image. Okay, and that really is the main part of it. Now it's just a case of using various filters and settings to change the colours and make it feel like a Van Gogh painting. Okay, so I'm going to go Image, Adjustments, Hue, Saturation, and I'm going to bring up the saturation first, just to make it nice and bright and colourful. Okay, then I'm going to right click on the layer and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to take this layer and I'm going to go to Filter, and it will bring up the gallery, and by default it starts you with glowing edges, but you can always find glowing edges in the drop down menu. Okay, but I want those glowing edges just by default to be there, so I'm going to click OK, and then from the drop down menu above the layer I'm going to scroll all the way down until I find something that I think adds a little bit of colour and makes the image a bit more interesting. So it's one of these really. I think I'm just going to go with the colour layer. Let me see. Yeah, this one's good. I'm going to stick with this colour layer. Okay. And I'm going to bring the opacity of the layer down so that it kind of blends the two together a little bit more. So I've got that blue coming through, but I've got the kind of flesh tone underneath. I'm then going to right click on that top layer and click on Merge Down, and that's going to bring my two layers together. So I've got a slightly more interesting image now that I'm then going to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue, Saturation, and play with a little bit more. Bring up the saturation again, click OK, and then I'm going to go Image, Adjustments, and Colour Balance, and that's going to let me play with the various amounts of blue, green and red that I have in the image. Again, I'm going to play with this, and really at this point it's up to you where you go with the colours. I'm looking for the kind of colours that he used in the later part of his career, the colours that weren't quite so healthy. And you can see I'm using hue saturation again, and I'm changing it from master to various colours so that I'm only changing those colours when I change the saturation and the hue. So that's another way you can just change the colours on one part of your image rather than all of it. Okay, image adjustments, brightness and contrast. So I want to just up the contrast a bit and bring the brightness down. That's good. Okay, so I'm looking for a very particular colour in my instance, but all of these particular ways of working are going to allow you to change the colours to whatever your preference is. Okay. Now I'm going back to filter and stylize and oil paint again, and I'm just going to bring the cleanliness up a bit on this one and the scale up a little bit, just to make things a little bit more pronounced and make those paint strokes look really nice and 3D. And then I think just a little bit more image adjustments, color balance. I just want to tweak those colors a little bit more. And this really is just the kind of noodling that you're going to have to do with the color balance and the image and adjustments until you get the kind of color palette that you want. Okay, various ways of doing it, looking at the mid-tones and the highlights and the shadows. And once you're happy with the image, you will have hopefully something that looks a bit like this, with all of those paint strokes and different colors showing. And that is this piece done and dusted. I hope you find this tutorial helpful.